Hello, and welcome to another of the Zulu's Painting Show, the show where I take you through a variety of painting tutorials, tips, and tricks, and do my best to impart to you the knowledge that I've gained about painting to you. Today we're returning to an old project, a project that I started in a previous episode. If you'd like, those are on Facebook. I'm trying to get them up on YouTube, but I'm discovering that some of them did not get recorded properly. So I'm still looking into that, but Facebook currently has an archive of all of these videos if you'd like to see more. So let's go ahead and dive into the model. There we go. So this is our Phoenix Hawk from the Battle Lance? Yeah. The new Clan Invasion Force Pack, the Inner Sphere Battle Lance, has this particular guy in it, and we have been having a heck of a time keeping this on the shelf. I believe we just got a couple more, but we may have already sold out of those. So hopefully we'll be getting more in soon. But until then, these same techniques can be used on other mechs. So I figured, well, actually, and it doesn't even need to be used on mechs. These painting techniques can be used on all kinds of different models. More particularly, you can kind of see it there on the leg. We're going to be returning to this paint job. Now, I just did his pylons and his part of his leg. So yeah, a lot of stuff needs to be done. We did a lot of basing on this guy the first time, getting this yellow on here, getting some of the little stripes of black. So we're going to be just continuing that that layering, and we might hop into doing a little bit of the metal stuff on his jump jets there and his guns. He has some on his arms as well. So yeah, this was one of the few models that I managed to remember to actually write down what paints I used. So on the light parts there. They're a little washed out because of my light, but or because of the video. Let me see if I can fix that just a little bit. Ooh, there we go. That's a little better. Yeah. So as you can see, we've got the sort of lighter color there, and then it fades down to the darker color. As a reminder, and this is the light color we'll be using is the Ubshabi Bone. Warboss Green is going to be our mid color, and then the mech itself was primed in the Army Painter green. I forgot which green. See, I wrote it down, but then I forgot immediately which green it was. But the whole thing was primed in the green that you can see on this base, and then was hit with Beltan green wash, or green shade, rather. And that's why on the green parts, you can see there's a sort of mottled look, and it is darker green in the cracks and crevices. It's surprising how many of my models start with base coat, the whole model a single color, hit the whole model with a wash, and then start picking out details and highlighting and all that sort of thing. It's either that or start with the model single base, a Zenithal Prime, hit it with the contrast paints, and then move into detailing after that. So this one is the wash variety. We'll go ahead and get started into it. And the sort of end product is going to be something more along this line, where you've got that sort of lighter shading on all the different panels to really bring out the color. So let's go ahead and start with, I found that it's easiest to start with your very light color. Don't forget to shake your paints. I have a tendency sometimes to sort of separate a little bit, especially with acrylics. Just gotta give them a good proper shake. And then because I use these Citadel pots, it's always kind of hard to get them out onto your palette. I am using a wet palette because I prefer the way it keeps the paints moist for the painting session. I won't generally keep them from session to session, just because I paint relatively inconsistently, but I find that keeping the paints wet during the session is very helpful. So what I'll do is I take my little skinny brush here, I grab a little dollop of the paint, and I just roll it onto the palette. Now if you notice, I do have two water cups. This one, if we get to our metallics, will be our metallics water pot, and this one is our non-metallics. That is mostly because I don't want those metallic flakes that are in the metallic paints to get into my non-metallic paints. Actually, I think I'm going to go ahead, and so this is the starter brush. You get this from the Army Painter starter kit. We're going to go ahead and keep using this guy because it has that kind of mid-range point for the tip, and that'll be sort of the point that I'm looking for. So I wanted to have it be a nice kind of accurate tip, but at the same time, I also don't want it to be too small. So now we just start lining the top parts. And I'm gonna do this in sort of sections, just because I'll be honest, sometimes it can feel a little overwhelming to have the whole model have a specific part of the whole model done. I like to, to feel like I'm getting somewhere. And for this first part, just going to try and hit the top sort of third of the different panels. I'm gonna make sure I got a good angle for you guys to be able to see what I'm working on. So this is going to be interesting. These top parts of his head are just going to be, you know what? We're gonna lighten them up now, and then we'll come back in and get the some of the detail work. A lot of what we're kind of doing in this first part is kind of getting a feel for where the color should be. None of the parts we're doing is going to be a single pass. Do I want those ears to be metal? No, they're going to be antenna. Do we know what these little things on the top of his head are? Does it make it more aerodynamic? So if you'll notice, whenever I pick up paint off the palette, I always do sort of a spinning motion. It's because what I'm trying to do is to promote a sort of sharp tip on my paintbrush. And I achieve that by spinning the brush. Also, one of the things I really like about the wet palette is by having the wet palette, I've already sort of thinned my paints a bit. I've said this many times, but I'll go ahead and say it again for those of you who are new. I very much am a fan of multiple thin coats over, sort of just one thick one. It's a lot harder to control. I always like to associate it with kind of the baking analogy of you can definitely, you can't. Sorry, let's see. So if you have something that's cooking at 300 degrees for 15 minutes, if you cook it at 600 degrees, it won't cook in what would that be? 7.5 minutes. It'll just burn. It might makes sense, especially if you're particularly opaque paints that you're putting on like a light one over a dark one. The temptation is just really glob it on there. So I think I might go for my character brush. I'm gonna get a little bit finer details than I'm able to get with this little guy. But yeah, those finer coats are gonna make it so that you can sort of fix your mistakes. You can keep the detail of the model. Speaking of detail of the model, so as we go, the sort of sorry, so you can kind of see on these that the green shows through the tan, and that principle is what we use for this particular paint scheme. But we want to keep in mind that we don't want in some places for it to come all the way through. So up at the very tops here, we want to put a second coat to make sure that it's mostly it's fully that Upshabi color. So gotten started there. Let's go ahead and grab our Warboss green. Oh, also, the brush I switched to is our... I got a lot of light coming in from a lot of places. There it is, character brush. The character brush has a much finer tip than the starter brush. My starter brush, it seems, is starting to like roll over, which is weird. So all right. So we've got our first couple chunks, and they are quite blocky. So now we're going to try and sort of fade those lines. So right where the two colors meet each other, I'm going to paint over with my Warboss green. So now I've created three colors. I have the Upshabi bone, we have the Warboss green. Actually, the Warboss green isn't really its own color anymore because it's got the base color green underneath it. And oh no, I'm trying to find a good spot where I'm not blown out. Give me a sec, guys. Sorry. Light color is really bright. Let's see. Okay. If I do that, nope. So if I bring the camera back, well, make it see a little better. Okay, there you go. So back to the colors. Just trying to make sure you can actually see the colors I'm talking about, because otherwise this means nothing to you. So you've got the areas that's the Upshabi bone. You've got the areas that are your sort of base color. And then where the Warboss green goes over it, you've got now a new color that is the Upshabi kind of Warboss color. And then you've got the base color with the green, or the Warboss over it. So the idea is that you're trying to kind of fade the colors in between each other. Now that does mean that your Warboss green, you really do want to be nice and thin, so that you can have the other colors sort of show through it. Gotta make sure I have the right focal length. And then process is mostly just kind of going over it until it feels about right. Now, what's going to be difficult, and I mentioned this before, is because the very tops of these panels are the things that would be the lightest, getting the coloring right is going to be sort of awkward. To be honest, I'm not keen on this guy's head. It's kind of a pain. Is that so blown out? It's very bright. What if I do this? Much easier to see. And I can do that. Does that make it easier to see? I think so. It's the fun of trying to play with kind of subtle color differences over this particular medium. So now the fun part is, now that we've sort of done that, what I do is actually go back over with some of my Upshabi bone to try and kind of blend the lines even more. I really want to just keep this kind of keep this just a little bit of paint on this guy. I'm just trying to just fade those lines in between each other. The hope is that you really can't tell the difference between the green and the tan. So really sort of fade those. Oh, what is that? Got a full-on chunk of something. That's not good. So every time I'm doing a line, what I'm really shooting for is to try and hit that, like, as I'm introducing a new color, I want to try and sort of aim for where the two colors fade together, or where the two colors meet. Also, I'm really not. I need some of these paints a bit more. That line is very easy to see. Yeah, maybe I need to work on something else. We'll come back to that. Yeah, so actually what I might do, I know I'm bouncing all over the place, but what I'm realizing is before I can really start into this arm, I kind of want to have a better sense of what is metal on that arm. So, yeah, let's go ahead and continue jumping around in colors. Oh yeah, Eric's asking what kind of brushes I'm using. For this particular one, I've been trying to stick to the same sort of set of brushes. For my personal painting, I jump all over the place. I have Citadel, I have Army Painter, I have just brushes that I've found just throughout the thing. For this particular setup that I'm using, I'm trying to only paint with the same set of brushes on the stream to make it a little easier. I'm using the Army Painter Wargamer brushes. So I've got the Wargamer character brush. I've got the regiment brush, which I think this is one I'm going to switch to in just a moment. I've got this starter brush from the starter paint kit. We've got the good old-fashioned dry brush. And then for the big stuff and the washes, we've got the monster brush. I don't know if you can kind of see it over the box, but for... Oh, yeah. The boxes are properly hiding them, doing what they should. I've got a whole bunch of different brushes that I use, but to sort of keep it a little bit more succinct, I've tried to stick with just these brushes for these particular paints. I've been bouncing all around as far as which paints I use. Speaking of which, we're going to hop over to our lead belcher. Give it a good and proper vigorous shake. I'm going to go ahead and change my waters because I will rinse my metal brush in my metal container if I don't move it. It's funny. I don't like when I'm just painting just for fun. I a lot of times will just use the one water container, and I know I shouldn't. I know that it gets metal flakes in with my non-metallic colors, but I just lazy a lot of times. But for you guys, I try to go the extra mile. Try to set a good example. For the detail work is the character brush. This guy here. I've found that... Sorry, the question was which of these is the smallest tip for detail work? I've found that brushes that get much smaller don't have kind of diminishing returns. Sorry, and we're going to switch to our monster brush to apply some of our metals. So you can have particularly tiny brushes, but the problem is they start... the paint dries out on them so very, very quickly that I don't know. I feel like I have more control with a slightly bigger brush, but that just comes to a very fine point. That's why a lot of times you'll see me sort of rolling the brush on the palette, is because I'm trying to maintain that nice sharp tip. But Army Painter does do, they have Insanity brushes and that stuff. And Army Painter is not the best quality brushes. There are a lot, like, paint brushes get very expensive very fast, depending on how much you want to spend on them. They, however, are the brushes that we have at the shop. So I figured, let's go ahead and showcase the brushes that we have. And I'm at this point not a good enough painter to really need particularly fine point brushes. I'm an okay painter, certainly, but yeah, I haven't got to the point where I've consistently been noticing being stymied by the quality of my brushes. All right, we're gonna do these two little barrels on the tips of the arms as well, but we're gonna switch to a slightly smaller brush for that. But I also got way too much metal for what I need today. No, that's okay. I'll also get these jump jet pylons. Oh, and we're gonna have to clean it up a little because I went a little hog wild with my metals. Oh, get the brushes from Michaels? Yeah, I find that a lot of times hobby brushes can be a little bit... because a lot of times the scale that you paint with miniatures is a bit smaller than I think a lot of hobby brushers are sort of prepared for. Hobbytown actually is another great place, Hobbytown USA. They've got a very wide variety of much smaller brushes. Oh, dang it. So metallics do this fun thing. If you get too much water in them, the pigment and the metal flakes will separate. So if you start seeing what's happening here on this right pylon happen, just go ahead and clean off your brush. Get it nice and dry, and then you're just gonna kind of brush over it. You try to just brush that muck off there. Because yeah, you don't want your metallics to be too separated. It'll do funky stuff. There we go. That's a lot better. All right, we're gonna let that dry for a minute. So I can come back and do a second coat without just moving the paint around. I'll be honest, that's one of the things that I have the mistake of a lot of times is I'll get sort of impatient. I'll get my first coat on, and then I'll want to immediately try to put the second coat on, and you gotta let it dry. All right. Otherwise, you just push the paint around, which isn't helpful. So I gotta remember to keep it close. Let's see. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and go to our regiment brush for the... I put that way out there. Just change the real estate out of my palette. Yeah, so trying to use that big old brush on these would have been a real pain. So what sort of things have you been painting, Eric? And are there any specific techniques that you've been wanting to learn more about? Yeah. I always like trying to do a third color. Now he does have the green, the black, and the yellow, but that kind of different color is always a fun contrast. It helps sort of I don't know, creates visual interest. I talk about that a lot, but essentially what I'm saying when I say visual interest is like it has to be sort of compelling to look at on the tabletop. It doesn't have to be. But what I think, what I strive for is making something that looks interesting on the tabletop. That's why a lot of times you'll see my paint jobs have kind of a similar sort of style in that it'll have a primary color with a secondary color and then a tertiary color that sort of is a little bit of a splash. Because I find that style creates an interesting look to it. Okay. Ooh, doing a yellow-blue X-Men lance. I like it. Yeah, I've been really enjoying the new sculpts for these guys. I love having all these little panels all over it makes it a lot easier to sort of pick out your different colors and to sort of work with the color schemes. I think it offers a nice sort of variety. Oh yeah, I got a little color where it oughtn't to be. So let's go ahead and fix that now before I forget about it. Especially since the palette already has the colors on it. Switch back to the old character brush. We're just going to grab a little bit of this War Boss green, and we'll use that to sort of clean this up. just a little bit, making sure that the greens are where the greens should be and the metals or where the metals should be. I really went crazy on this side. All right. I always like to tell people that I see miniature painting as kind of like paint by numbers. You can tell where to put the different colors. I mean, obviously you have to decide what your color scheme is going to be. And I think what I might do for my next one is I might do one before it has the color on it, but that kind of follows one of the color schemes of some of the other sets of mechs that I've done. And by that I mean, so like these guys have sort of an established color scheme. You know, they've got that green, they've got the yellow, they've got the black. That's sort of what they've got. But if I were to start a new mech that we're going to be popping into this set, I would try to think of where to put things. You know, like where do I want to put the green of the panels? It's like, well, those guys have yellow on the shoulders, so this guy's gonna get the yellow on the shoulders. But they also have a little bit of kind of yellow in some other spots. So it's like, where can I put it here? Ooh, yes. So Eric's has a question about dry brushing. So dry brushing is a thing that I have always had a very sort of, I don't know, interesting relationship isn't necessarily how I'd put it, but there are times when I believe in the past I've just used dry brushing when I don't think it was necessarily appropriate. And I've been learning a lot more of kind of when to use it and when not to use it. I think a lot of times doing I actually honestly dry brushing has become one of the techniques that I a lot of times will start a paint job with. So I've started doing a lot of Zenithal Priming, which is where you take and you paint the entire model black, and then from a sort of high angle you will spray down with a white. But then what I've discovered is you'll miss some spots sometimes with that. Like it won't necessarily have all the angles that you want. So I'll go back through and do some priming with, or not priming, some dry brushing to really bring out those details, so that as I'm putting my other layers on, I can kind of see where the details need to be and how to really bring them out. What I was realizing though, that what I had the trouble with is that a lot of times dry brushing leaves it sort of powdery and sort of dry looking. And so I'd use it on things like clothes for Warhammer minis or flesh or other surfaces, and it just wouldn't look right. And what I actually, I was watching Midwinter Minis, which is an awesome painting tutorial. His stuff is great. And one of the things that he would do a lot is he would dry brush and then he would wash. And that works really well to sort of to take away that sort of dryness that you get from dry brushing. Now, in some places, that's exactly what you want. For instance, dry brushing does wonders on things that are supposed to be metal. Like it is magical on metal things. The problem is it's sometimes hard to keep it from hitting other things. So that is definitely a thing that I've run into. So one of the things that's kind of interesting, especially with this particular technique that I'm doing, is that you don't always want to get like every single panel. Like you want to get a lot of them, but like for instance, the underneath side of his chest there, I'm going to probably leave that color scheme, because for the most part the model is going to be seen from sort of here or at most here. But also, even if you do see those under panels, you want to sort of make it like you want them to be a little darker, you know, because that's the underside. And if the details weren't so very crisp on those bottom sides, I might want to try and bring them out more. But these models in particular have some really deep lines, which help sort of with the details. So I don't you know, personally, I don't feel that I need to really bring out the details as much. And again, for the underneath side, for the top sides of things, I like to try and, you know, because that's where the light would be. Try to make sure that I get good coverage. There we go. Finish the sentence, Rob. Also, if I trail off on an idea and don't finish it, please let me know and be like, hey, could you go back to that sentence you abandoned halfway through? I'd love to know where you were going. I would love to know where I was going. Okay. I actually, the other day, had a dry brushing incident that gave me a delightful inspiration for painting. So I had I have a set of mechs. They're very similarly painted to these guys. They've got the base color is this sort of metallic silver, and then they've got some yellow and black stripes, kind of like hazard stripes. And I was dry brushing the metallic part after I'd done the yellow, like a fool. And I clipped a little bit of the yellow, just a little bit on the corners, and I realized that it looked awesome. But I didn't like this sort of haphazardness of it. I wanted to have like really control of over where the colors were going. So I ended up essentially reproducing the dry brushing look, but using some sort of highlighting work. All right. I'm not going and finding this A because the case is closed, and B because it is one of the old Raw Parthos, which we do not have for you to purchase. Unless you guys would like to see what I'm talking about, in which case I'm sure it'll be fine. But I think I showed it a little bit with I believe it was the Grendel. I was doing some sort of damage work. Although that one was much more of sort of where sort of bullet hits would happen. This was much more like sort of just where on corners, like as the mech is going through kind of doing stuff, like where it would wear. Goodness. What a sentence. I'm always mesmerized by how hard it is to talk and focus on little details. So, and then apparently I'll just go quiet. It's funny. I find one of the things that especially going from being a Warhammer painter to painting BattleTech minis, I find that I kind of enjoy having a color scheme that requires that I really take some time with each of my individual mechs. Because, like, in Warhammer, I'm fielding, shoot, I'd usually field between 40 and 60 guardsmen and another half dozen or so tanks. Whereas in an average BattleTech game, I'm fielding, mostly because I play Succession Wars era tech, I'm usually fielding, between 3 and 5 models. Because I'll usually throw in a tank because I like tanks. But what's nice is I get to spend a little bit more time with each of these guys, making them sort of their own kind of unique heroes or characters. That's looking pretty good so far. We've made some progress. Oh, you know, I want to get those exhaust pipes. It's gonna probably be a tricky one, but I think it'll be worth it. Oh gosh, to really get in there too. Okay, I'm getting somewhere. But even harder though when I want to try and wash that. Got a little bit in there. I'm going for these like really small detailed spot. I find the more points of contact I can have with my hands together, the more sort of accurate I'm going to be with my brush placement. There we go. Got a little bit of the metallic in there. Looking good. Now what I'm gonna do, so I like it's subtle, and I might try to add a little bit more to it. So, and I was actually sorry. Let me back up. I like kind of a blued metal on these guys. You can see a little better. Oh gosh, you can see a little better um on the. Oh, you can actually see it pretty well on there. Our good friend the Irby. So I want to get it nice and blue. So in order to achieve that look, what I do is so I hit it with the metallic already. And then we're gonna go ahead and pop over to we have here we go. Do I have a smaller one or is it? Nope. Going for the big boy. Ooh. So we're heading to a blue wash, the Dragonoff Nightshade. So we're going to use this on all of our metallic parts. So sorry, I was just reading Eric's comment. He was asking if I use the handle with a little arm that comes up and over. Honestly, if I had one, I probably would. Um, I am a big fan of having something to hold on to that is bigger than the model's base. It doesn't need to be the Citadel ones. There are a handful of different brands. There's the ones that with the arm that comes up and over, which I really like. You can just do the old sticky tack on the top of one of your paint pots, or like a little mini Dixie cap. But yeah, no, I think having an arm up over the top would actually be very helpful because you never want to apply pressure or touch the model that you've been painting on because the oils on your hands will start rubbing the paint off. Also, if you happen to have paint from something else on your finger because you accidentally dropped it into your paint palette, then you can mush color where it doesn't belong, and that is a real bummer when it happens. So yeah, the ones with the little arms over the top sound like an awesome idea. I just haven't gotten around to getting one yet. Always remember to shake your paints. Oh. So, by the way, these little guys on the back of the paint pots are meant to be meant to hold the lids up so you can use them, but they only work some of the time. Right. So, when you first put this wash on, it looks very blue, but as it dries, it will lighten up quite a bit. Yeah. were I smart, I'd be putting this paint onto my palette, but well, I guess smart. If I were not lazy, I'm starting to get a better sense of where the model is in relationship to the camera. Because I'll be honest, there's been more than a couple times where I've been just painting away, and then realized, oh wait, you guys only see my hands or the paint thing. Yeah, I'm doing the wash in this guy pretty thick, but I also still don't want it to pool. And one of the things I really enjoy about particularly metallics is because they're not, they don't have a particular, especially the like your silvers or your gunmetals, because they don't have they don't really have much of a color of their own. I mean, obviously there's the silver, but they really pick up on other colors that you put on top. Now I'm gonna have to. So if you get the pooling like I've got here, what you can do is take your brush, clean it off, and then use the capillary action to soak up the paint on the model. And you can redistribute it elsewhere. All right. Look at that. Oh, you know where we forgot to put it? In the tops of those little pylons. But I'm going to use a slightly skinnier brush to get to those, because otherwise the whole pylon is going to turn blue real fast. I'm going to probably use this little guy. It's small enough that I can get into the crevice, but it's not so small that it's not going to soak up enough paint. I still want to get it in there. There we go. That's probably a little too much. That is okay. That's what we have capillary action for. There we go. If you don't know what I mean by capillary action, what I mean is that due to surface tension, the liquid will sit between the brushes, and because of diffusion, or the tendency for things to go from high concentration to low concentration, actually, no, I don't know if it's diffusion in this particular case. Either way, the moral of the story is the bristles essentially are holding the paint in between them, using surface tension, and so you can sort of soak up the paint into the brush in the same way that you would from the palette off the model, which is a handy little thing to have in the old arsenal of knowledge and information. There we go. Yeah, we're starting to get somewhere. Ooh, those back panels are going to be a pain. Let's do them. This is the difficulty. So these two panels in the back here are definitely going to be seen from the top a lot. But they have these big pylons on either side of them, which means it'll be kind of a pain to get to. But that's okay. A little bit of patience and a willingness to fix painting mistakes. That's all the difference. The right person in the wrong place can make all of the difference. There we go. Difficulty a lot of times I run into is bringing the lines kind of sharp on the edges. It'll sort of mush it. Yeah, you can really see it has kind of a rounded look to it, and I don't really want that. Gotta work to try and bring the sides down. Oh man, I definitely need to put a lot more green on here. Yeah, I like that. Getting very engrossed in my painting. This doesn't make for great listening material, but that's okay. Ooh. Yeah. Keep that rounded look away. There we go. Nice crisp lines. That's what I was looking for. It doesn't help that I'm essentially trying to squeeze in between these two. Yeah, that's not bad. And were I painting this just in my own time, I'd probably be doing something very similar. While I do like doing like a couple chunks of the colors, like I was saying at the beginning, I don't like to get too far with just one color. Partially because I've realized that kind of as I go through the painting process, I'm sort of discovering where I want the colors to be. I'm just gonna screw up my work that I did last time just a little bit. Just noticing it. Got very green. All right. It's not looking too bad. Let's see. So my hope for next week, I will have to do a little prep for it. So we'll see if I'm blindsided by having a new kid. But if I have the time, what I'd like to do is get a model. I might try to find a slightly bigger one. And we're gonna play around with washes. Now, I think this is a good example because I started with a thing that was one color. I hit it with a slightly different colored wash, and it had a little bit of a change of effect on it. This guy is a great example of sort of playing around with washes. Um, his branches here were originally a very light orange, and then I hit them with a red wash to get that kind of wood look to him. But washes are a thing that can be a lot of fun. And then what I should definitely do is episode after that, um, dive into some work with dry brushing because I've definitely done some dry brushing, but I want to we can definitely sort of look into it a little bit more in a little bit more detail, do some studies on dry brushing. All right, still got a couple more minutes, so let's go ahead and keep on working on this guy. Kind of happy with his right arm. Really happy with his head, but I think I want to do the cockpit before I really dive into the um, dive into finishing off the head because I'm gonna have to repaint these lines as I do the cockpit. Oh man, the cockpit. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, let's get a little bit more. Let's you know what, let's finish the arm. Finish the upper torso before you start jumping around all over the place. The back, you know what, the back could use a little more. So anyone else who's listening, if you have any other things that you've been painting that you've been enjoying, I'd love to hear more about them. Also, I'd be remiss if I did not mention that if you'd like to have more people to chat with about painting, about miniatures, there is a Zulu's Discord. That's also a great place if you want to try and get a hold of me on the off hour if you had specific questions about painting. I usually lurk around the BattleTech channel of the Discord. But if you go to zulusgames.com, you go to community, there is a link there to the Discord that'll get you in, get you involved, and then yeah, we can talk miniatures. If you happen to be in the greater Seattle area, hopefully here pretty soon we're going to start being able to have people meet in person and play some BattleTech. I know there's a couple guys that were talking about doing some Chaos campaign stuff, looking into the Ill Clan. Is that how do you pronounce? I don't know how in written form you'll tell me how to pronounce Ill Clan, but that's just what I've been calling it because that's what it kind of looks like. But I wonder if it's like for. Oh, you know what I just realized? So the 2C mechs are IIC. Is Ill Clan supposed to be one clan? Is that what that stands for? That would make sense. I'd feel sheepish if that was how it actually was, and I've been calling it Ill Clan this entire time. Kind of like calling it Deadmau 5. Doing some painting. You know the commentary is broken down when your painter reverts to singing. Just enjoying doing some painting though, you know? I find that painting is a very relaxing, very sort of soothing activity. It's always nice to have those, especially in these stressful times. Yeah. A lot of individual panels to paint. All right. Well, I think that'll probably do it for today. We made a good bit of progress. We got some color on the chest. We got the guns and the metal done. Got some of those little back panels. I think I'm actually happiest with how that sort of back area turned out. Oh, we didn't even get a chance to dive into the yellow. I should have done that. Oh well. There is always next time. But until next time, have yourself a lot of fun painting, Like I said, if you want to show off your painting stuff, feel free to go to the Discord and do so. Share this video with a friend. And until next time, stay safe out there, and I will see you next week. Bye.